Call to order Planning and Advisory Committee meeting of April 4th, 2022. Land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the Grand Bay-Westfield exists in traditional Williston Way land. The lands of the Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by our town is known as the Woolstook, along which live Woolstook people of the beautiful and bountiful river. We, the staff and elected representatives, pay respect to the elders, past and present, and descendants of this land. Item number 1 tonight, or 2, is record of attendance. Let the record show we have full attendance. Item 3, PAC meeting minutes of March 7th, 2022. Can I have a motion, please, to accept as presented?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Discussion on the motion? Thank you. Item 4, regular council meetings. Meeting minutes of February 28th, 2022, March 14th, 2022. Can I have a motion, please, to receive and file?
So moved.
Seconder?
Catherine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Discussion on the motion? Motion passed. Chairman's remarks tonight are Andrew Miller. We welcome you to the committee. 25 years. Does anybody have a conflict of interest in tonight's agenda? Okay. In my remarks, I should also comment that we're moving item 7 down to let item 8 and 9 move up the agenda, so we have Jennifer do her presentation. Jennifer, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the committee for having me this evening. We're going to just, as high level as possible, go through the proposed municipal plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendments that are proposed. For the most part, these are to remove the development charge. So just to give you a quick overview. There we go. Okay. So please interrupt me in the process if you do have any questions. The structure of tonight is just to give you a background of where these are coming from, an intro to the municipal plan amendment, intro to the zoning bylaw amendment, and then to give you an idea of where we are in the process. It was actually, these set of amendments were initiated by council. So council had a discussion and a want to remove the infrastructure charge affecting Colonel Hayes Boulevard. They wanted to do this temporarily on a 3-year term through the Community Planning Act. Our only option to remove something like that is to actually take it out of the statutory documents. So this requires it be removed, any language be removed from municipal plan, zoning bylaw, and subdivision bylaw. Because of the nature of the Community Planning Act, you need a public hearing process for your municipal plan and zoning bylaw. You don't need that same process for the subdivision bylaw. So what we've done is kind of put them into 2 buckets. There are some additional housekeeping amendments to the zoning bylaw that are required. These were brought forward by the development officer. So what we're asking for here is some better accommodation for seasonal dwellings and to accommodate the use of mini and mobile homes as garden suites. So where we are in the process, council referred this, so council opened the public comment period for the municipal plan amendment. Your municipal plan, because it is your regulatory guiding policy document, it requires a bit more of a lengthy process in order to change it. It's the same process as your typical zoning bylaw amendment with an additional public comment period attached. So on February 14th, they opened the 30-day comment period for the municipal plan amendment. That amendment being to remove the development charge. Council referred, I don't believe there were any comments received that I'm aware of. council made a motion to refer it to you folks and to set the public hearing, date at their March 14th, meeting. Subdivision amendments, like I said, don't need the public hearing, so you'll be seeing those at your next PAC meeting, just to kind of make things a little bit easier in terms of kind of going through those details. There's been some updates, just to kind of stick on the subdivision bylaw for a moment. There's been some updates to the Building Code Act that could kind of progress the subdivision bylaw forward a bit more to make it a bit more developer friendly. There's also some opportunity here where we're opening it up to make it very clear what your role is as PAC in the subdivision process. So we're gonna take advantage of that opportunity and kind of work through that with you next week to give you an idea of where, or next week, next month, to go through where so some of those updates are coming from the conversations we had together as part of the kind of PAC, I don't want to call it training, but the orientation type stuff that we went through. So there were some clear things that we could improve upon. We could also structure the document a bit better, make it a little bit more readable and developer friendly, which goes along with what the council is asking for in terms of removing that development charge. The ask is to make things a bit easier and to incentivize development and to get rid of a little bit of that perceived red tape. So, in terms of these infrastructure charge amendments, so in terms of the municipal plan, we essentially need to remove the infrastructure charge policy. So right now, it's essentially asking that a frontage fee be applied for development along Colonel Mays. This idea was to recoup some of the costs of installing the infrastructure along Colonel Mays. So we've essentially, any language referring to Colonel Mays Boulevard is being removed from the municipal plan. We're doing that same kind of exercise in the zoning bylaw to remove in the mixed use zone language that speaks to Colonel Mays Boulevard and that kind of frontage charge there. You'll see just, I'm ahead of myself. So we are just essentially crossing out this last line in the introductory paragraph. There's no specific policy in the zoning bylaw that says you have to charge this. Because policy belongs in the plan, so there's no standard sitting in the bylaw that says you've got to apply this, but to make things ultra clear, we're going to make sure that language is gone. So in terms of the subdivision bylaw, you're looking at the same thing we do. Through the subdivision bylaw, there is an ask that you have that frontage requirement. We're going to keep the sections that require, and we'll go into this next month, that require the developer to pay for the installation of infrastructure as part of a developer agreement, which is par for the course and standard now. We want them to pay for roads. We want the roads to be in place at the minimum standard. But we're removing that kind of language that sits there saying that new developers have to pay for old town decisions. So retroactively paying for infrastructure investments. So moving on to any questions around that infrastructure charge piece? Pretty straightforward, we're just cutting her out. In terms of the seasonal dwelling, those of you who were here when we updated the zoning bylaw and adopted the newest version of the zoning bylaw know that there was a lot of discussion around seasonal dwellings. The updates to the Building Code Act have allowed us to kind of provide some clarity here. So we are going to replace the definition for seasonal dwellings to add essentially the 58.06 square meter measurement that comes from the Building Act that allows that square meter, so that footprint, to be allowed as of right. So they just require a development permit. They don't have to go through all of this strenuous, do they meet, like, are they on a public street? Are they serviceable? Are it allows them to be removed from the similar standard that we would apply for a single detached dwelling and put them into a classification of their own, which is more in line with something like a cottage, a camp, or kind of an off-grid style dwelling. So we've battled a lot with this because there's a lot of land in the town where folks they have their primary dwelling that fronts onto a publicly owned and maintained road, but the lot goes way, way back, and they want to put some sort of seasonal or camp type dwelling in the back. It's not necessarily a problem, but we just had a struggle with how to use it or how to permit it. Now with the updates to the Building Code Act, we're able to say, as long as it's under this measurement, you're good to go. You come through, get a development permit from David, and off you go. So just to provide some clarity. So we're adding seasonal dwelling as a permitted use in the rural resource zone. This becomes removed as a conditional use. So now we're saying you don't have to come to PAC in order to have this seasonal dwelling, so long as it's below that 58.06 square meter measurement. We are adding conditions of use, which is a very inconvenient way to like describe everything. Conditions, conditional, but condition of the use, we're saying you can have one per lot, so per unserviced areas of the rural resource zone. Seasonal dwellings again have to meet that measurement, and they must meet essentially the criteria that were established in the Building Code Act. So leaning on another piece of legislation to ensure that the risk is low in terms of permitting these uses. Moving on to mini and mobile homes. So we are looking at the biggest impetus here is that folks want to have some sort of structure on their lot to allow for their kids to move in, to their parents to move in. And right now your zoning bylaw says that's fine, but it needs to be a permanent structure that's constructed in a traditional kind of single dwelling type way. It seems more realistic, and adding this flexibility will be a bit, it's kind of an act of good faith a little bit here, saying, okay, you can reasonably allow for a mobile mini home to act as a garden suite. So we're making those changes to allow for that, but conditionally. The reason is right now the development pattern in Grand Bay-Westfield you're not seeing mobile homes everywhere. But what we're trying to do is say this is a reasonable way to get units onto existing properties in a way that is cost efficient. But we do suspect that some folks will have something to say about it, so we put the decision in your hands. This will allow you, though, to look at those garden suite standards and make sure things are enforced, like it's got to be in the back and the rear yard, it's got to be behind the building line, got to be on the side, has to be serviced in the XYZ way. If there's slope conditions or parking issues, you can take all that into consideration, so it becomes a bit more neighborhood friendly. And it's almost like you're piloting this so that the next time this comes around as an issue, maybe this isn't an issue. Maybe it becomes an opportunity and then it can just be allowed as of right.
Just make the point that we've had that garden suite in there.
Yeah.
We've had one application, but it's not well known, well used. So
Yes.
This is just looking at that as another way of seeing the same.
Yes. And just to kind of speak to what's on the screen here, that we're still only allowing mobile and mini homes as a primary use in the mobile home residential zone. So we're only talking about them being used as a secondary use here. To continue on that, so what that means in terms of amendments is that you're changing the conditional uses of the R1, and is it R1 and R2 or R2 and R3?
The 2 and 3.
Yeah, R2, R3. So we're looking at where you have those R1s, and we did hear through the zoning bylaw process that folks are very resistant to kind of development pattern change in that neighborhood. They are still in those neighborhoods permitted to have the garden suite, permitted to have the secondary suite, meaning basement apartment or apartment in the rear of the building. But that was a change that was very difficult for us to push through. So what we're suggesting here is, for the sake of implementation, we look at the R2, R3 zones as kind of where we're gonna start. So again, you still have those standards to lean on for those garden suites, and PAC is kind of guided by those standards, but should an application come through, you're still able to add conditions that you see fit to allow for these uses to integrate into the neighborhoods effectively. So just a very quick overview of the process so far. So right now we're sitting obviously at review of the municipal plan and bylaw amendment as well as the zoning bylaw amendment. What happens next is the public hearing, first and second reading obviously, and then it goes to registration in May. I'll be back in May to walk you through the zoning bylaw or subdivision bylaw changes. And that's all. Any questions for me?
Just one on the dates, that we can bring forward the first and second readings on April the, I think it was the 20th, but the third reading will be after.
Right, yeah.
So it'll be May the 9th.
So-
Because then we'll bring the subdivision bylaw
Right.
for the third
Okay.
readings.
I'll just make a note to change third reading in May.
Any questions for Jennifer?
Nothing too crazy.
Just one, through the chair. Jennifer, should council or a future council wish to reimpose a subdivision, a frontage fee on Colonel Nates Boulevard, we have to go through this process again for both the municipal bylaw and the bylaw enactment and the municipal.
Yes, through you, Chair, to the councillor. So you essentially take it out and put it in the exact same way. In the future, should you want to institute something like a development charge, I think I would recommend you look at kind of a different scale. You've got development incentives now. That's what you would essentially use as the framework to institute something like this. So the reason I say that is just to set the expectation that should 3 years down the road you want to implement this again, it likely won't look exactly how it looked before we did these amendments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving forward, we need 3 motions to move this forward to council.
The 2 motions, one for the bylaw 121A and the other is 122B.
Yes.
Sorry, can you say that again?
The 2 motions that we're looking to put on the table is recommendation to council for bylaw 121A and 122B.
I would move that, Mr. Chair, that the Planning Advisory Committee recommend to council to proceed with the enactment process of draft municipal plan bylaw 121A.
Seconder,
I'll second that.
all those in favor? Contrary? Discussion on the motion? Passed.
That's where the typo is, I think that third date is what it should be about, it's not 14th.
David, we need another motion, right, for draft bylaw 121A and 122B?
I'll make a motion that the planning advisory committee recommend to council to proceed with the enactment of draft zoning bylaw 122B.
Thank you. Seconder,
I'll second.
Kelly? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Discussions on the motion? Motion passed. Okay, then move on now to item 7.
Which is nine.
Uh,
Which is nine.
which is 9.
Do you have the form?
Yeah.
And part A of the motion is from Julie Costello, 6 Horseshoe Lane, PID number 218156. And she is variance to the 7.5 setback from the front porch line. Bear with me here, I'm trying to find all the picture. So the variance setback is 7.5, proposed is 4.37. So can I have a motion, please?
I'll move that the planning advisory committee grant the following variance to the town. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
Yep.
To the town of Grand Bay-Westfield zoning bylaw 122 for the development of a new 3.66 meter by 6.1 meter, 12 feet by 20 feet addition as shown on submitted site plan for Civic number 6 Horseshoe Lane, PID number 218156. A, we grant a variance of 3.13 meters to reduce the required front yard setback of 7.5 meters. It says up to, but it should be down to 4.37 meters.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Discussions on the motion? And the second variance requested by Costello's. The other one is for the deck.
No, same, that's the same.
It shows the deck, but that's not
That's not
required. So it's all.
Maybe it was just the one.
Yeah.
Did they wanna speak to it at all?
Yeah. I forget, we have an audience. Is anybody here in favor to speak for the variance?
Well, we'll gladly speak.
If so, please come up to the podium and tell us who you are and
Good
where you
evening,
live.
everyone. I'm Julia Costello. So I filled out the application for the homeowners, my son and daughter-in-law, Ashley and Clinton. Ashley's here, nice. I don't know if you have any questions. I think Dave did a really good job on his report. Made it all really clear what they'd like to do. Do you have any questions? What we wanted to do is just take off that front porch, which comes 8 feet out from the house, and put on an addition that would come out 12 feet from the house. So we're asking really for 4 feet. But it does come too close to the property line, so that's why we need the variance.
Anybody have any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Very straightforward. Just a comment, Mr. Chair. I had a look at, hi Julie.
Hi.
I had a look earlier this afternoon, and I think it's going to be a great addition to your to the
Okay,
house.
well, we are hoping that it will be. We are going to re-side the house as well when we do this, so because it needs it clearly. And inside, there are no interior stairs, so this will give them, it'll make the house way more usable for them. And it is actually a very tiny house, it's only 560 square feet, which doesn't even, it's very difficult for banking and for insurance and a lot of other things, but anyway, this will increase the square footage for them and make it more usable, so we would appreciate the variance for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of the application? I have to ask this 3 times. Is there anybody that does not want to, who wants to speak against the application? Anybody who would like to speak against the application? No. And again, anybody that would like to speak against the application? If not, thank you very much. Your motion is passed, your variance is passed, and you'll be in contact with David for all the appropriate building permits. All right.
I appreciate it, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number, I guess we're gonna call it 10, application for subdivision. Application of landowners, Kelly Developments, and applicant is the Sonya's Surveys Inc. And is there anybody here? I guess not.
Well, late.
Clear the room.
Clear the room, last one it is.
I'll just point out that there's the 5 lots were originally brought forward as a 6-lot application in 2004. The same property pins that were placed in are there, so he's planning to create 5 lots, leaving the 6th lot open for future development possibilities, either by a road or if that you could make it a separate lot again, that some more opportunity for development.
So I take it that vacant spot between lot 22-4 is a roadway possibility?
Yeah.
So with this 5 lots and 2 lots that they already developed, that excludes him from the water quantity and quality?
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't go this way again. It's 10 lots.
All righty. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move that the planning advisory committee recommend to council accept a payment of $133.12 money in lieu of a land for public purposes for the creation of 5 new building lots out of PID number 301-48480 on Highland Road, with approval of the final subdivision plan by the development officer to be subject to payment of $133.12 cash money order, certified check, or debit for the land for public purposes.
Could I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion passed. Discussion on the motion. Moves us on to item 11, adjournment. So moved. Seconder?
That's a unanimous.
Thank you, everybody.